Alrighty, good afternoon, good evening, good day to every single one of you that is tuned in. I know it is a Sunday. It is May 1st. Can you believe it? It is May. That means it's a couple more months closer to the MSc IPP package review. It's almost summertime as well, so I shouldn't forget that. But I'm super excited for our session tonight. This individual we've been trying to schedule this for the longest time. She's been traveling everywhere. But I don't feel too bad for her because she's, I think, in Hawaii. She'll correct me if I'm wrong on that one. So don't feel too bad for her. I'm kidding, sis. But I'm super excited for our topic today. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring her in. I'm going to bring in Lieutenant Gibson. Hi, LT.
Aloha and
I,
greetings from Hawaii.
See, that's why I told you. Don't feel bad for her. She's in Hawaii enjoying that tan of hers and everything. LT, welcome. And on behalf of everybody that's watching us right now, thank you so much for your time. But I'm not going to take steal your thunder too much. But if you could go ahead and introduce to everybody yourself, who were you before LT Gibson, what you've been through, and what are you doing right now?
Thank you. For first of all, special shout out to Lieutenant Abreu. Appreciate this putting this together. As I stated, I wish when I was doing this, we had something like this. So truly special shout out to you, brother. This is amazing what you're doing. Um, yeah, if folks could just take advantage of this. So again, thank you so much and appreciate the opportunity. So a little bit about myself. So I am a oldie but goodie. I've been going on now 25 years actually. Um, so I started off as a uh, hospitalman recruit, an HR, commissioned in 2012 through the MSc IPP. My duty stations consist of so I started off at Port Hueneme working with the Seabees at the little clinic there. From there, I went to Balboa Hospital, Naval Medical Center, San Diego. I was there for about 4 years. And then down the street to San Diego MEP Station. I was the LPO for the medical section there. And from there, I took orders to the green side at Okinawa, uh, 3MEF, Marine Expeditionary Force. And then from there, I went to NRG Richmond, Virginia, Navy Recruiting District as a medical officer. So I was on H1 as a medical officer. Um, and I did really well, was Medical Officer Recruiter of the Year. And I submitted my MSc IPP. I have a bachelor's in healthcare management and a master's. I got my master's in 2012 and an MBA. It took me 6 years later to submit because several factors. One, I was afraid, and I didn't have the right GRE scores. Anyway, so commissioned out of NRG Richmond, and then my first officer billet when I commissioned was Second Medical Battalion. I was the XO and operations officer. I was a POMI, and then from there I went to actually deployed to Afghanistan again as the OPSO XO for Alpha Surgical Company, and then left and went to Naval Hospital Yokosuka. They put me in the materials management department, and that's where I decided I wanted to be a logistician. So from there, they sent me to become a medical logistician and a comptroller. Um, and then from there, um, decided to cut my shore duty short, and I got orders to the USS Ronald Reagan as the medical admin officer, so a patient admin billet. Um, the 2 years felt like 5 years. And from there, um, negotiated orders. The 2 years went by fast, and I became the MMD, Materials Management Department head, back to being a medical logistician at Beaufort Naval Hospital. And then from Naval Hospital Beaufort, I am now currently at Marine Forces Pacific, um, Hawaii, Marfort Pac, back with the green side. And I am dual hatted as a medical logistician and a medical planner, so a medlog planner. So that's me in a nutshell. And again, thank you for joining me. And again, shout out to Lieutenant Brew for putting this together.
Wow, LT, I'd never heard your background until today, by the way. So, for those of you that are listening, we are fortunate actually enough to hear from somebody full experience, your experience in itself, and also Mayo tour is close to my heart because I'm a current Mayo of the USS George Washington. So it's nice to hear that somebody as yourself is fully diverse. And I think you're the perfect person to present us this presentation today. And it is coming up for that season. As Lieutenant Commander Mo Taylor, retired, calls us, it's interview appraisal season. It's his favorite time of the year. So for those of you that already have drafted your package, you already have all the letters of recommendation. Now it's time to sit down. Pay close attention, take notes, rewatch this video because I looked over this presentation and I was like, "Wow, I wish I had this for my first interview ever." So, without further ado, LT, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Okay, thank you. All right. So today's really there's about seven total slides, and four of them actually have the meat. And the interview appraisal is based on one, my perspective when I was actually in your shoes trying to do this, and also in the perspective for those who are having to create their own board. So again, when I was putting my package in, I was at NRG Richmond where there was no MSC officers. I had to find my MSC officers. Most of you guys, especially if you're hospital corpsman, if you're attached to an MTF or a clinic, your career counseling office actually sets your board for you. So you don't have to do that. So these slides are actually based on if you have to do it yourself. From my perspective as someone who's trying to pursue commission, as well as, so I talked to a couple of senior officers, '05 and '06, who sat on the board, and I asked them if you could give us some tips for preparing for interview appraisals. Next slide, please. So what I did is I basically put it, and this it's roughly so just like as you were preparing for your commission, it took you a while, right? It took you a while to get your bachelor's. It took you a while for those who already got their master's. Good on you. Um, so you're leading up to it, all right, up to the night before. So that's how I laid out this brief here. Next slide. So at a minimum, at 3 months or more, or less actually, or more actually, so you want to know your specialty. So I'm not sure who the audience is here, but if you're trying to be a healthcare administrator or a physician assistant, an EHO, know your specialty. Okay, I guarantee whoever is sitting on your board is going to ask. Okay, I know when I was putting in my package, I was told that, so I put it for a healthcare administrator. And in my interview appraisal, I put, since all I knew was PAMI, I stated that. I stated that I worked with a bunch of PAMIs, and that's something that I would be interested if selected. However, starting off as general HCA, I'm open to, you know, whatever training there is. So know your specialty. All right. Also, know your current events. So again, this is from a senior officer who sat on the board. These are his tips. Their tips, actually. I interviewed a couple, so their tips to me for you guys. So know your current events. Know clearly everyone knows what's going on in Ukraine. Okay, got it. So what is Navy medicine doing? Okay, what are we doing to help out this situation right now? Also, if you're not very familiar with MHS Genesis, okay, the electronic health record, that's something new that just came online. Okay, know that stuff because for those who are trying to go through, especially healthcare administration, those are some of the questions they may ask you. Okay, um, so your five W's: who, what, where, why. Why do you want to become a naval officer? Specifically an HCA, if you want to be HCA, PA, why? Okay, so know that. Start reaching out to your senior MSC officers. And when I say senior, please make sure it's either an '05 and above, okay, in your desired specialty. As I told some folks who have been mentoring, people have come to me as a lieutenant asking for an interview appraisal. And I tell them, it might be you should get an '05 and above. One of the reasons is one, they've been in a long time, okay? And they know people. So a lot of times if they have Captain so and so giving you tens, that's almost, hey, well, this person gave this, this sailor 10. So, you know, so make sure it's O5 and above. Now, there are some cases where, you're kind of stuck and you have folks lower. That's okay. But if you can, make sure it's O5 and above. Okay. And start reaching into now. We're very busy. So, all right. And then also know what's on the appraisal sheet. Okay. The most up to date one. And study it, look at it, know what you are being judged on. Okay, it kind of cheats for you. It tells you what they're going to be looking at, what they're going to be marking on you on. So make sure you're looking at that. And then lastly, make sure you practice. Okay, mock appraisals. Get used to, just like a job interview. You know, they're looking at your poise, how you speak. All right. So make sure you, and the more you practice, the better. It's just like going for a job interview. Okay, next slide. All right, so roughly about 1 month. Again, keep studying, know your specialty, know current events, study the appraisal sheet, know what you're going to be judged on, and then also at this point you should almost be done with your package. Your package should be almost complete. So for those senior officers that you reached out to, if you haven't already, make sure you send them an electronic copy of your package. So that way they are basically prepared to interview you. Um, you want to give them that opportunity. So when you send them the most current interview appraisal as well as your complete package. Next slide. Now, roughly about 1 to 2 weeks, again, all the above, mock appraisals, no current events. But at this point, you should also make sure your uniform is inspection ready. Okay, you should be pristine, just like you're going up for a sale of the board. You make sure your uniform is on point. Okay, because you will be judged as soon as you walk into that office. Okay, you also want to prepare your travel arrangements. So for my interview appraisals, again, I didn't have a board, a career counselor who set my board, so I had to do it all by myself. And one of my interview appraisals was at the Pentagon. Um, that was it took me a while because you had to again make sure for security. So and then I also drove there because I knew parking was atrocious. So make sure you do all that prior to the interview. Okay, you don't want to get caught up getting lost, getting stuck in traffic, can't find parking. So you make sure you want to do all that prior to your interview. All right. And then if you haven't submitted your electronic copy, then make sure you have hard copies. Okay. I did that as well. I brought hard copies to each interview appraisal. Um, Again, a lot of times they were going through it as I was talking. So, um, and then don't assume, all right? Ask for the type of uniform, okay? When I went, I asked the officers that it was interviewing me, and some said dress blues, some said, uniform of the day. You want to be at least in your service, okay? Don't ever go in you're working, whether it's Marpats or your blueberries. Um, this is your opportunity to sell yourself. So you want to look nice and presentable. Okay, next slide. All right, so the night before, okay, again, all the way up to, and don't stress yourself out, okay? At this point, you should already know your specialty. You should already know, why you want to be a physician assistant, why you want to be a naval officer, okay? And make sure what you say in the interview matches what it says in your package. Okay. Again, I'll repeat that. Whatever you say in your interview matches what you say in your package. Okay, in your statement, in your motivational statement. All right. Um, so you want to take your uniform out and do a final look, making sure that it's good to go. You don't have any stains, no strings attached. Okay, and then you want to pack up some pen and paper for notes. So sometimes, that could, sometimes when they're talking, they may want to mentor you at that moment as well. So it might be a good idea, and ask them as well. Ask them when you introduce yourself. Do you mind if I take some a pen and paper out for notes? Okay. And then don't forget to pack your hard copies. Okay, if you're making copies of your packages, please make sure it's in your bag. All right. And then lastly, make sure you rest. All right. You don't want to show up tired and can't concentrate. You're already nervous enough. Okay. So you got to make sure you rest the night before. All right. Just like taking an exam. One of the things that I did want to mention, and I forgot to mention, one of the officers that I did ask, she actually sat on the board, and she mentioned that if you have an opportunity to create your own board or pick your own um, officer to do interview, pick someone you know. Um, I did that as well. There was two that I didn't know, but there was one. He worked at the National Capital Region. He was my deputy surgeon at 3MF, and I got a hold of him. But she said that this is, as you know, this is very competitive. So the goal is to get tens, right? Tens across your interview appraisal sheet. So if that officer knows you and you worked for him, he or she will be more inclined to give you tens versus someone who doesn't really know you and doesn't know your work ethic. Okay. So if you know somebody, don't ask for a letter of recommendation. Have them do your interview appraisal. Okay. All right. Let me just go through my notes real quick. I think make sure I had hit on everything that they had told me. Um, and I think that's it. So, in a nutshell, all right. Again, do you have what it takes to be part of that 0.1%? As you know, this is a very competitive program. All right. So, you got to be the best out of the best. Everybody here that's watching right now, it's online, is phenomenal. All right. But you got to be above phenomenal. Your package has to be absolute perfect. And I'll speak for the healthcare administrator. I was very fortunate. So, since I was attached, my office was in DC. I went to go see Mrs. Kemp. Mrs. Kemp, Miss Beverly Kemp, no, she does not sit on the board, but she's very influential, and she has seen thousands of packages. Okay, she personally went through my package, and um, so she told me your package has to be perfect as a HCA attention to detail. All right, so make sure, and I've seen a couple. If you got those little black marks in your package, sometimes if it's too much, it's a box with a plus. Figure out a way to get rid of those. All right, if you have to make it a little bit shorter, but she told me personally, get rid of those. All right, that makes your package messy. Again, your package has to be absolute perfect because everybody here is phenomenal. And if you want to get picked up, you got to go above and beyond. All right, and that concludes my presentation.
That is awesome, LT. Thank you so much. I think your information coming from like senior officers and people that sat the board and were recorders is very, very crucial for this presentation. And we're going to open it up to everyone now that's watching that has any questions. I'm going to bring one in, and you and I can answer this. Let's see. There it is. From Miss Winnie Nija. Can interviews be virtual? I can speak on this, and you can jump in as well, LT. Yes, it can be virtual. The board does understand there's also an option there for telephone or for virtual interviews. That they can check, so they just have to make sure that they annotate that, because the in-person interview, you do want that because there's that face-to-face impression. But I don't know, what do you think, LT?
Absolutely, especially on the days of COVID. That's definitely an option. Again, if you've seen the interview appraisal, it does have that box. and that interview, that officer will check the virtual. Again, just because it's virtual doesn't mean it's a lot more lax either. So make sure your uniform is good to go. You have no distractions. So set it up, again, like a job interview. So
Yes. And speaking of which, this just reminded me, I think this is why it stars aligned for today's interview. I was listening to a podcast, Adam Grant, called Work Life, and the title of it was like how to make a better pitch. So everything that we do is, whether it's like selling your boss for a new idea or whether you go to a job interview or you're trying to date someone, you're pitching yourself. So interview appraisal is just like that, pitching yourself. And what they found, and I'm all about science and data, I think that's the healthcare administrator in me, is that preparedness over like at 99.9% of the time beats confidence, right? So you can be the most confident and passionate person, but if you're not prepared, like you were saying, LT, like your package is messy, there's misspelling, there's grammars, the person that's not as confident but is fully prepared can sometimes outshine you on that regard. So the timelines that she put and gave to us, which if you just logged in, I see a lot of people coming in online right now, rewatch those because I wish I had that because my very first interview, I remember my Devo, who is now Lieutenant Sosa, hi Marine, she walked me to the company. You know her? Yes. So
yes.
she walked me to the FMTV XO, who is now retired Commander Brown. And he was my first interview ever. I was nervous. I didn't know what to study. And he gave me feedback. It's like, hey, Marine, he was like, hey, Marine, can you step out? I want to talk to HM2 Abreu. And he was like, hey, I can tell I'm your first first officer that you interviewed with, but you need to. Then he gave me these tips, like just what you presented there. So I wish I had that. So for those of you that are watching, take notes. Know your specialty. There's nothing worse than I don't know. I'm still like trying to dabble if I want to be whatever, right? Have that vision and stuff. LT, which reminds me, how was your first interview, your very first one? And can you tell us how many times you've applied for MSc IPP?
Whew. Oh man, so long ago. Um,
Sorry.
so again, so I ended up graduating with my master's in 2006. It wasn't until 6 years later where I submitted my package. And to be honest with you, so at then I was doing medical officer recruiting. So I was putting officers in. And my chief actually set me aside and counseled me. And he was like, "What are you doing, HM1? Didn't you want to be an officer?" I'm like, "Yes, chief." He said, "So what are you doing?" He said, basically, no one can do it for you. You got to do it yourself. Right. So,
hmm
um, and actually, Mo Taylor, retired commander,
My
Vincent,
guy.
and he looked at my package and he said that, you need to put your package in. So I went ahead and put it in. Again, I at that time your GRE had to be 1,000. And I took GRE prep courses.
hmm
I could never get 1,000. All
hmm
right, so that's one thing that scared me, and I knew I'm like it's very competitive. There's no way I'm going to get selected,
Sure.
right? The highest I ever got was a 900. So after talking to my chief and folks pushing me to put it in, I finally put it in, and I got picked up the first time.
Very nice. Very
So
nice. That's awesome. And see, there's a lot of officers that did that the first time. Your interview, the tips that you gave us, did some of this kind of, when you went through your process, I know it's been like 10 years ago, were there some of these tips where you were like, I wish I knew that when I came in? Or did you practice some of these tips? Or do you remember anything at all that stood out to you in one of those interview sessions?
I wish, honestly, I would have had more mock appraisals. I wish
Yep.
I would have practiced more,
hmm
because as confident as you are, your nerves are going to kick in,
Yep.
right? And so again, the more you practice, it's like doing a presentation in PowerPoint.
hmm
So public speaking. I don't know, Lieutenant, you're pretty good at that, but I'm not.
You did great. You did amazing.
So yeah, I wish, looking back, I wish I could have just did a little bit more practicing with
hmm
that. The one commander that I did, he was my deputy surgeon in Okinawa, so
Sure.
I knew him. It was easy. The other two, so the one that was at the Pentagon, he was actually the commanding officer of recruiting
Mm.
for Wellington. So he just got orders to the Pentagon, and that was actually nerve wracking because that was the first time I went to the Pentagon, and that alone was
Nerve wrack. Yeah, I bet.
yes,
As an
intimidating.
HM1. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that because I remember it's funny because I also got commissioned from NRD Richmond. Similar
Oh,
stories. Now we both have Mayo tours. I see some stuff aligning with us. Um, I got a call from Senior Chief John Gills, female, the female. There's two of them in the Navy. If you guys don't know who they are, the JGs. She messaged me and she's like, "Hey, bro, BUMED is doing a interview for the NCR region. Would you like to come down? That's in Falls Church, Virginia. I'm in Norfolk, so it's a drive, about 3 hours, but I'm willing to do it. And I can definitely understand what you're saying about how you were nervous. I mean, that's BUMED, the BUMED. It's like intimidating. Your service corps chief is your future service corps chief is there. All the big wigs are there. So I'm like, am I ready for this? So sitting that in itself, the travel, I can definitely relate to what you were saying was nerve wracking. So preparedness is key, and like you mentioned, mock appraisals are critical, and we're actually trying to set that up too for the group, for the individuals that are brave enough to join live and get a mock appraisal from officers. None, regardless, and I think just practicing in itself will really help you with smoothing out your interview and everything. So thank you for that, LT. Um, let's see. There's another question that came in the group. Let's see. Let's shrink this a little bit. Oops. It says, should I get an interview appraisal from MSC officers in the desired specialty that I'm applying for, or should I find any O5 and above MSC officer? LT, I'll let you answer that.
so preferably you want, since you're applying for a medical service corps, you want a medical service corps officer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so both Lieutenant and I have been with the line on the ship, and you know, love the SWO guys, but they really don't know medical service corps, because they're focusing on
Mm-hmm.
leading the ship. So you definitely want to get a medical service corps officer
Yep.
versus just an O5 or O6. Good question.
Yep. And to add on to that too, I think if you're trying to become an HCA, having commander HCAs, captain HCAs speak on you, or speak on your appraisal can also help out. With me specifically, I had MSC officers with different flavors when I got selected. There was one pharmacist, two HCAs, one was a comptroller, and one was a generalist HCA. So, like LT was saying, try to tie in your appraisals to the MSC, because they're the ones I imagine appraisals. And I think we talked about this in the previous video as well. LORs are more of like people that are speaking for you to bring you into the wardroom. Appraisals are more for like, we're bringing you into to our core, to the MSC. So wardroom and specialty to me are like two different things. So the appraisals are the ones that are vouching for you. It's like, yep, you're the MSC that we need, the future MSC that we need. So thank you for that. I think this one's for you too as well, LT. Another question unrelated to appraisals, but do you have any GRE prep recommendation sources, since you kind of dropped that on there and stuff? I don't know if you have any, LT.
Okay, whoever asked that question is giving me back nightmares. Okay. um, so I was stationed in DC. That I'll have to look that up, and
Yeah.
when I find it, I will post it on there.
Yeah.
I also bought the one for is it for dummies or something like
Yeah,
that?
GRE for Dummies. I remember that. Yeah, I think it's been a while too since I took mine, but I remember there's a specific one, and I'll post it too. There's a website that kind of has like there's tons of them out there now, that there's a study plan that they create for you and practice and stuff. And I'm pretty sure if you if you go to our MSC IPP group and you type in GRE GMAT, there's this question has been asked before. A lot of the people that went through the training pipeline could help you out, but LT and I will do our research of what we used, and we'll post that as well. So, and I think those are the questions that we have, LT. Before we let you go and enjoy Hawaii, do you have any last minute or closing remarks for our future MSC officers that are trying to commission, try to become just like you in your current position right now? What's your advice?
I actually have a question for
Oh,
those on
sure.
the line. For those on the line, if I'm just curious, who are there any non HMs?
Oh, yeah, that's true. So for those of you that are online, can you just like type in what your rate is in the comments section? So that we can kind of gauge if you are what your rate is. I know yesterday with Lieutenant Williams, we had ABHs, YNs. Oh, all right. So somebody says YN1. Okay, we have a YN1. There's two Facebook users that says me. Yeah, if you guys, so we have a couple LT. There's a couple of them. There's an LS2 on the line, an OS, an AZ1. Oh wow, a lot
Wow.
actually. So a lot of flavors out here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. For those non-HMs, all right, I'm gonna be blunt with you. All right. You guys have to work harder. All right. When I was the Mayo on the Reagan, when I was talking to the sailors there, I told them, you have a little advantage, not a whole lot, but you have a little advantage because you're not in the medical field.
Mm-hmm.
You don't you don't have that network of MSC officers. All right. So you got to do a little bit extra. All right. So if you're near an MTF, you got to go visit the MTF. You got to go
Mm-hmm.
talk to the DFA, the Director for Administration. All right. He's like the third man on the ponytail in the hospital, he or she. Okay. So you got to, and you also got to find yourself an MSC. Again, Lieutenant Abreu, shout out to amazing putting us together. But find those MSC mentors to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're going to tell you and lead you down that road. So again, I'm just being honest. You got to work a little bit harder. Okay. So
Yeah. No, that's true, and I agree with LT there. It's you know, being a non-HM, and I think Lieutenant Williams kind of covered this last night as well, is she had to do an extra homework as well, researching, joining organizations. You really have to do an extra homework versus an HM who's already fluent with Navy medicine, with what 4Ps are, with what the Navy Surgeon General and how MSC fits in the picture. You have to do that research as well. But fear not to. And I think I remember, I think it was Commander Cleckley who said this when she did a brief in Norfolk. She mentioned specifically that, hey, just don't just say like, oh, I'm just a CS, so I won't have anything to contribute. You're already like downplaying yourself, and no, you do have something to contribute. You have necessary skills that the MSC community needs. And MSC, believe it or not, is not compromised of all prior HMs. We have DCs. I met like DCs, YNs, GMs, you name it. I think a prior Army, prior Marines. So there's a lot of flavors out there, and it's my heart is very full to see that there's a lot of non HMs, at least for this past two cycles. A lot of them are more engaged, and we need you just like as we need the prior HMs as well, or the current HMs. So thank you for that. Thank you, LT, again for your time on behalf of the group and everybody that's tuned in. And we know you just came from travel all over the world, and thank you so much for the knowledge that you gave us tonight. Yeah, and I think that's it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks. Bye, sis.
See ya. Thank you, bro.